Good morning, church. Once again, I thank you for joining in this offering this morning. These videos have become the way we work to continue to be a part of each other's lives now that meeting in our sanctuary just isn't happening. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we welcome you. Asbury is a different type of faith community than most. We are a community where the only prerequisite to you becoming a part is the recognition that you don't have to have it all figured out and that you're willing to take this journey with us. If this is your first time, we encourage you to visit us on Facebook or on YouTube. Once there, like or subscribe to our page to keep up to date with these offerings. Details on how to access either of these are in the details attached to this video. Additionally, visit our website or even reach out to me directly. Now, for those of you who have called Asbury home for a long time, if you are like me, you are probably asking, when can we expect to start meeting in person again? My answer is, I'm not sure. At the same time, I want to hear from you. So over the next few weeks, we'll be sending out a survey via email and snail mail, and it will help us to learn our community's thoughts. We want to hear how you will know when you are ready, what scares you, and what you think you'll need to feel safe in sanctuary worship. Truthfully, when it comes to this challenge, I'm simply just not sure what to do. And although we will continue these offerings well beyond our return, as we develop a wide extended community, my heart longs for in-person worship again. Community is so critically important to everything we do. But at the same time, the virus is real. We all know that. Some of us know that better than others. I would just assume take this at a snail's pace if it meant keeping this family I love safe. So the best start is to start talking to each other, hearing our fears and anxieties, listening to each other when it comes to our hopes and plans. I hope you will take that survey seriously when it arrives and help me understand what is in your heart. That said, I do welcome you all to this online moment. In this message, I am stepping back into the lectionary by diving into one of Jesus' best known parables. But I do so, and as I do so, I celebrate that we live in an age where we can still connect despite whatever distance separates us. Before I jump directly into our scripture, I want to talk about an interesting side effect of offering these messages online: data and analytics. As a number, math, and spreadsheet junkie, you know how much I appreciate this and how much this excites me. In virtual worship, there's this great deal of data that comes with these offerings. Ultimately, this data piles upon itself, and somewhere in there is the explanation as to why there have been weeks when we have had a message that's viewed hundreds of times by hundreds of unique viewers. Yet there are also weeks that we barely have a dozen views. And in that data, behind the data, is the answer as to why. Now, in the data, I can tell by when folks click away from a message, that precise moment, I've lost you or the distractions around you have won out. It seems as if this is a magic number, somewhere after 12 to 15 minutes. If you stay beyond that, you'll most likely stay for the entirety of the message. The data says you'll give me 12 minutes to set this hook, but beyond that, you're gone. Now, this is the challenge of ministry, of evangelism, of church growth. How can we set this hook quickly enough so that the world doesn't get lost in the noise? How can we reach a world that needs this gift through the distractions that steal our attention? This gift is so important. It matters so much, and the world is so noisy that this may be our prime directive or our foundational quest. Today, I cannot imagine a life without this gift of faith. I do this because I want folks to experience and feel this anchor and experience this truth. I have been so incredibly transformed by this faith, and I want the world to know. I want others to have it. But I wonder if it's even possible to squeeze this message into just 12 minutes. I'm so often lost in the size of this task, especially because although I think I've figured some out, I begin from this painful truth that I'm still far from perfect, sometimes painfully far from it. I bark at my kids way too often. I bark back at my dogs more frequently. I often say things I don't mean, sometimes to be funny, but other times to be mean. I hold stresses of life too tightly in until they come out with anger, and too often I act without grace. Sometimes the worst side, the jealous, the envious, the fearful, the half empty side of me rises to the surface. Yet time has taught me that faith is faith despite these things. My faith has reminded me not to give in to the fear or the anxiety. My faith has taught me to be better again and again and again. It's taught me that when I am not the best version of myself, it's not the end of my story. There's this concept, teaching in the Wesleyan Church called Christian Perfection. Officially, we are taught that over time, if we work at it, we can grow onwards towards perfect communion with God. We can live that life in the here and now that God created especially and uniquely for us. Now, this teaching is so central to our brand of faith and our faith journeys that I would argue that it's hard to be considered a Wesleyan without ascribing to it. This quest towards perfection doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes, intentional or otherwise. Rather, we are taught that over time we can grow so that more and more of our life is lived out in the imitation of God, overflowing with grace and love, no matter how often we stumble. Maybe it would help to imagine waves. It's helped me to have this visual. The high point of the waves reflect those moments in our lives when we are living in harmony with the life that was intended for us. The low points represent when we miss the mark. The journey of Wesleyan perfection is towards a life where living at that peak prevails, wins out. Because of that goal, the day-to-day journey is about minimizing the time that we spend on the downslope or in the gaps. Faith is certainly not about being perfect all the time. It's about recognizing how wonderful those moments of perfect and complete communion with God truly are. And then realizing we need to be about getting and staying in those moments. And this recognition changed the paradigm of faith for me. For so long, I thought faith was living a perfect life. No mistakes, no low moments. And I saw faith as a simple collection of rules to follow. Today, my faith is the recognition that even for me, the life at the pinnacle is possible, even for a screw up like me. And I will screw up from time to time. I will be less than. So when I find myself missing the mark, sliding down the curve, I won't give up. And I won't get lost in the shame. I don't let the heartbreak win. Instead, I expect the resurrection, renewal, and rebirth that gets me looking towards the pinnacle again. I think the hardest part of my ministry has been how to make this raw truth visible to others. I want the world to see and feel this. I can preach and teach this faith, but I want my girls to trust in this as much as I do, so that when darkness falls on them, they know that they'll have this truth to grab a hold of. This truth says that they can make it and they can breathe. I look out in the world that seems to miss this, and I want to figure out a way to pause, to stop their worlds long enough for them to catch a glimpse, just a glimpse of this promise. Yet I keep finding myself frustrated when I stumble in this task, realizing that 12 minutes isn't long enough. There's just way too much noise. And there are too many people who claim the name Christian, but preach something that looks so vastly different. I've convinced myself that all others need to do is feel a small piece of what I do, and it will be enough. Yet too often, the noise wins out. And when it does, I can feel myself getting lost. And I guess I hear echoes of this story, or of this struggle in this morning's story, the parable of the sower, parable of the soils. At its most basic, a parable is simply a tool to poke at you. These stories weren't simply told to teach concrete realities and truths. Instead, they were there to prod, to nudge, and poke at you in your thinking. They were intended to provoke your imagination. A parable's purpose was to get you to ask questions and to rethink a new perspective about God, life, and faith. Now, borrowing from one translation of the Bible, the parable of the sower tells of a farmer planting seed. As he scattered the seed, some of it fell on the road, and birds ate it. Some fell in the gravel, and it sprouted quickly, but it didn't put down roots, so that when the sun came up, it withered just as quick. Some fell in the weeds, and as it came up, it was strangled by the thorns. Yet some fell on good earth and produced a harvest beyond his wildest dreams. Now, Jesus would leave this story hanging in the air. It then falls upon us who hear it to see how it fits into our day-to-day. As this story ended, Jesus went further with those disciples in his inner circle. He asked them, "Are you listening? Are you really listening?" And then he began to poke. When someone has a ready heart for this, the insights and understandings flow freely, he said. But if there is no readiness, no trace of receptivity, it all disappears. That's why I tell stories, he said, to create readiness, to judge the people towards insight. In their present state, in the noise, they can stare till the end of the world and not see it. They can listen till they're blue in the face and not get it. In the first evolution of my faith, I saw this story as a message about them, about others. I saw this story in a way that explained why others missed what I had found. It helped in those moments when it seemed like no matter what I did, everything remained the same and nothing changed. Today, I see this less about them and more about me. In my life, the seeds of faith are cast in all types of moments and scenarios and fall upon all types of soil. First, he mentions those moments when the seeds fall on gravel and the truth or our gospel, good news, whatever you want to call it, just can't penetrate. And I can't tell you how often the gospel has failed to take root in my life when it has been needed because I'm simply too hard-headed. Love my enemy is a perfect case in point. Do I even struggle with it, or am I completely content and satisfied in traveling the world, wishing ill to befall him or her? Trusting in God, even when it seems God is absent, is another. So often in the hard moments, I trust my spreadsheets, my to-do lists, my 401ks. Then there is the rocky ground that the gospel often falls upon. At first we receive it and it feels so true, so good, so pure, and so right. But then life gets hard. I often teach of a moment, back when my wife was sick, that I had allowed the fear and the anxiety to win out. For a little while, I lost sight, and I certainly felt lost. I lost sight because the ground my family was traveling became scary and unsteady. It became rocky, and I missed God's presence. But then what about the seeds that find their place in the thorns? How often has the coming and going, the to-do lists, the messes the hurdles, the roadblocks, the appointments, the stresses of life, how often have they stolen the joy? How often have I gotten lost in the coming and going of life? How often have these thorns of life strangled my focus or shifted my attention? When times were not rocky, but rather just noisy or thorny, how often have I missed the point? But thankfully, through it all, there is some seed that still falls on good soil, and the gospel takes root. It grows and it grows and it produces a harvest beyond our imagination. And that seed changes things. It makes a difference. When this story was about them, I could say their soil was rocky, or their soil was too hard, or their soil was full of thorns, and it was easier for me. Today, the story is about my soil. It pokes at me to be less worried about convincing the world and instead be about cultivating the soil of my life in advance of the harvest I want to see and be a part of. I want the life on top of the waves that, because of how the seed was planted in my journey, changes the world around me. Turning the story towards me puts the onus of cultivating the soil back on me. And that process begins with the spiritual disciplines, finding not just worship, but Sabbath, finding daily prayer, finding activities for partaking in the sacred gift of creation. And perhaps it's about facing precisely those things that scare or challenge me. Maybe it's about the surrendering of my time, my talent, and my treasure without being prompted by the analytics. Maybe it's about simply showing up to God and others for no other reason but because it's hard and it hurts and it opens me up to heartbreak. It is precisely these sacred practices, when they are treated as equal parts devotion as discipline, that tills the soil, that makes the harvest even possible. Yes, that 12-minute mark is certainly real, and it sits like a wall. But all I can say is trust me, step into this, and I will tell you a story about me. I will tell you a story about me and a God who, in this radical and transformative grace, an unexpected and undeserved grace, kept showing up and then truly changed everything. I will tell you about a God and a grace that keeps casting seed all the time across all types of the rock and thorns of my life. A grace that is calling me and offering me something greater, something that pokes at my imagination as what can be. It helps me to breathe easier, to find my way, and offers a hope and a joy unparalleled. And the seeds, those very seeds, are being scattered around you as well. Maybe if you long for this gift, if you long for this type of assurance and hope, maybe it begins simply with considering your soil. Our promise as this sacred community is to keep preaching our promise to be a part of that journey, well beyond the 12-minute mark. Thanks be to God. Amen. In an acknowledgement that you are likely getting tired of hearing us Wesleyans, us Methodists, we like our music. We believe that music serves to fill in the gaps, especially when our human words fail. John and Charles Wesley, the founders of this movement, were said to commandeer pub music and pub songs, and then rewrite their words and use them to not only break the ice, but to teach of God's grace. For many, it was simply a way of letting your guard down so that when you did, you could feel and hear and experience something new. This morning, the music I chose is equally about the video as it is the attempt to get you to experience and feel something differently. So I saw this random video and I was caught off guard by the image that accompanied it in the search results. They were stormtroopers from Star Wars. Now, you don't often see gospel music and Star Wars characters side by side, and as such, I instantly felt it deserved a second look. And as I stepped into it, I was hooked. I let my guard down, and I experienced something new. This morning, I hope you enjoy my choice.
Have you ever met those who keep humming when the song's through? It's like they're living life to a whole different tune. And have you ever met those that keep hoping when it's hopeless? It's like they figured out what the rest haven't yet. The second you realize what you have inside, it's only just a matter of time. Ever since grace got you left, till your whole side's hurt and smile, like you just got away with something. Why? 'Cause you just got away with something. Ever since grace got you. So when you're standing in the rain again, you might as well be dancing. Why? 'Cause there ain't no storm that can change how this is. So next time when you feel blue, don't let that smile leave you. Ever since grace got you left, till your whole side's hurt and smile, like you just got away with something. Why? 'Cause you just got away with something. Ever since grace got you. Ever since grace got you. Grace got you. Got away with something bubbling inside of you, spilling over 'cause your life is full. How incredible, undeniable, monumental like the Eiffel, uncontrollable, let the joy flow through. Ha ha. Giddy over pity, pretty please, let me see your hands in the air with you at your seats. Warm it up, let go, shout it out, celebrate. When you can't articulate, just say amazing grace. The second you realize what you have inside, it's only just a matter of Ever since grace got you left, till your whole side's hurt and smile, like you just got away with something. Why? 'Cause you just got away with something. Ever since grace got you. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ever since grace got you. Yeah, 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 yeah. Grace got you. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ever since grace got you.
As we bring this video to a close, I want to once again remind you to connect with us in our social media pages. We truly want to be a part of your journey. As I said, the details are listed in the notes section of this video, and at the same time, know that you can reach out to me directly and confidentially via the contact information in that section. For those of you who are regulars in our community, be on the lookout for that COVID-19 survey, as I truly long to hear what is in your heart. Finally, the story of the sower that was shared a few minutes ago also reminds me of another story I heard some time ago. For the life of me, I cannot remember the source. I can't remember whether it was in a sermon or in a newspaper. And it is the story of a lifeguard on a public beach. While she was on duty, a man was about 50 yards from shore and started to drown. And he was panicking. He was yelling, he was screaming, he was thrashing in the water. And the lifeguard saw this immediately, and she walked out waist deep into the ocean, but then stood and waited. She just stood there. All the while the man threatened, and the crowd who had gathered started to yell at the lifeguard. Finally, as the man looked like he was going down for the very last time, the lifeguard snapped, swam out, and snagged him. When she pulled the man onto the shore, the crowd was angry. They were calling her a coward. In response, she simply shook her head. "Can't you see," she said, "he is bigger and he is stronger than I. And if I had gone out sooner, if I had gone out earlier, he would have likely, in his fear, drowned both of us. As long as he was trying to save himself, I couldn't save him. When he got tired and gave up, it was only then that I knew I could save his life." Too many of us travel this world kicking and thrashing and trying to save ourselves. As we do, the world gets rocky, gets thorny, gets hard-packed, and we miss out on what is possible. I think what I am learning in my own faith journey and what we are working to build this community around is that our real journeys begin when we meet God's grace and say very simply, "I give up. I give you control." I pray that not only does our community continue to be a safe place to do that, but those of you who need just that opportunity, reach out and take it. May this entire extended community go forth in the peace of all that God promises. May you know that not only the church is here, but more importantly, God stands beside you, before you, and behind you in all moments. Go forth in the peace of God. Amen.
Have you ever met those who keep humming when the song's through? It's like they're living life to a whole different tune. And have you ever met those that keep hoping when it's hopeless? It's like they figured out what the rest haven't yet. The second you realize what you have inside, it's only just a matter of time. Ever since grace got you left, till your whole side's hurt and smile, like you just got away with something. Why? 'Cause you just got away with something. Ever since grace got you. So when you're standing in the rain again, you might as well be dancing. Why? 'Cause there ain't no storm that can change how this is. So next time when you feel blue, don't let that smile leave you. Ever since grace got you left, till your whole side's hurt and smile, like you just got away with something. Why? 'Cause you just got away with something. Ever since grace got you. Ever since grace got you. Grace got you. Got away with something, something bubbling inside of you, spilling over cause your life is full. How incredible, undeniable, monumental like the Eiffel. Uncontrollable, let the joy flow through. Ha ha. Giddy over pity, pretty please. Let me see your hands in the air with you at your seats. Warm it up, let go, shout it out, celebrate. When you can't articulate, just say Amazing Grace.
The second you realize what you have inside, it's only just a matter of